We are. Hello, I'm fixing everyone's cameras and want to welcome you all to another episode of me getting payback on Hetman for that Defense Politics Asia panel.
You just put me through Adagio for the Strings, which is it's actually one of my favorite pieces, but I didn't expect we were going to listen to the entire thing.
I actually love that piece.
I do too, but
So peak 1990s gaming was on the PC was Homeworld, which was an
mhm.
RTS space game. It's it's 1990s gaming, so it's ridiculously difficult, and that is one of the principal themes they used for that game. Uh, it's fantastic, and it's also
it's also
probably for that reason not gonna be flagged by the copyright system.
Oliver Stone and his controversies aside. That was also the theme of Platoon, which is an amazing movie. It's one of my favorite anti-war films. Um, and that's actually what familiarized me with Adagio for the Strings.
And
Um, so this video better be worth the song intro. It better be as miserable and as funny as me putting you through Scott Ritter.
well, in fairness, I have not watched this particular Whatifalthist video, but he has produced remarkably consistent material in that it's all bad, so it can't
Okay.
possibly be that great. Can you see the stream? Is it good?
Yeah, I can see. Yep.
Same deal as before. When you see something, say something, and I will pause the video. Let us begin, dear viewers.
Doesn't repeat, but it definitely does rhyme. However, those rhymes can become so uncanny that they leave you in complete
It
shock.
echoes.
As I've shown many times before on this show, there are clear cycles of history, and one of the strongest and strangest parallels out there.
What is this map?
Yeah, yeah,
He
that's
does
kind of
this. He makes his
it's
own
already
maps.
really bad. I wasn't, it took me a while to focus on that, but he's like, what?
Like that's obviously Rome, and that's fine at the extent of its power. But what is this? Why is India a lighter
Yeah,
blue
why is
color?
India a vassal of the United States?
Why
Is
is
not a
Vietnam
country.
like? Why is Australia the
It's
same
bad.
color as the United States, Canada, and
I mean, you could get away with Canada, maybe. Actually, you really can't, but you could at least, I don't know.
we can get ourselves in some trouble by calling Canada America's hat.
Yeah, yeah, we could. I'd rather not alienate our Canadian viewers.
Anyway, let's keep going.
There is that between the Romans and Americans. These two empires' histories match in very palpable ways. This video will
What?
look
Wait,
into
wait, wait,
these
wait, wait,
often
wait, hold
startling
on.
similarities.
Okay, stop. I just noticed that Indonesia is part of this.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure why.
And let's see what else.
Generously, you might imagine this map is no, it's not anywhere that America has bases. We don't have bases on India
No, we don't.
or
I don't think.
Greenland
Hmm.
or Finland or Sweden.
Yeah, this is very, very bizarre. And oh, he deliberately left out Venezuela.
Or North Africa.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. I'm sorry. I just
Between
I
two
caught that.
societies and what it could possibly mean for the future. You won't ever see the world in the same way again.
Have this edgy guitar. Okay. You know what? I got a friend who makes.
The history
Who
Hold
makes
on. He makes theme songs for channels, and they can do a really good job. We can beat. I just noticed his little theme song. I think that we can do better. But anyway, let's keep going.
as we go, I want to try to collect music from various parties, like
Okay.
commission various parties, but that is a future goal. Right now, my principal goal is making it through this video.
Okay.
history of Rome fascinates us all, and the many emperors who have come to power have stories that are incredibly interesting. And you can all learn about them in the docu-series I, Caesar. The series covers...
I'm not being paid.
Around 15 years ago, people thought the brave...
What is this? Why is YouTube doing this? Hang on.
Military and... Some countries just start out...
I already hate your voice.
History doesn't repeat... how we can avoid the worst aspects and failure today.
Okay, I'm not getting paid by people, so
if you start looking for them, you can see some surface level similarities between the Romans and Americans. Both are superpower republics that rose extremely quickly to rule most of the developed world. Both are ethnic amalgams that showed insane amounts of...
Wait. Yeah. I was just kind of like...
We'll do Zokalix.
Where this guy get his maps?
He makes them himself. British. An ethnic map of the late Roman Empire. British. No, it is not an ethnic map of the late Roman Empire, because if it was, you would call that Celtic. Also Celtic. Germanic is probably...
I'm not looking at the ancient Roman one, I'm looking at the United States, and I'm just like... And what period is he trying to... Is he talking about? You know, you have Spain here. Clearly, you know, the Southwest, you know, was part of the Mexican Empire, so that's, you know, long after, you know, the Spanish were thrown out. But I'm looking and I'm just... He's labeled the Appalachians. He must have, you know, seen something about the Scotch-Irish. Italy. These are all from disparate periods of immigration to the United States. This is...
Yeah, it looks like it's like it looks like it would match a dysphoria, but not really. Like, I don't really recall all of Northern Ireland being in Texas.
No, not at all. This, you know, I thought that this was going to be like a long, dragged out thing, and already with the maps, I am having so much fun with this.
I'm telling you, like we could have just made an entire channel just on this guy, just by itself.
I almost kind of want to do like... I don't know how mean that is, but I don't care. Like every month we should review a episode of his.
Well, that's good, because he comes out with a new long video every month. We're not gonna run out anytime soon.
You know, like I'm looking here too at like he's I think he's got like Hartford, Connecticut, New York City, all is Italian. And
yeah, I don't think I've
problems with that. As much as I would love, you know, like you know, having Italian ancestry, some
is France is am I very messed up on my geography, or his French portion in the south, because he's got a weird one sticking up in New England, but his French portion of the south is nowhere near New Orleans, is it? Or am I going cross-eyed?
Yeah, New Orleans was Acacian or whatever the...
Yeah, but that would be closer to being right.
Yeah. This is really bad. And actually, so he has Angola for areas of the south. Like, how can you make a map like that?
I'm not
like possible to make that sort of a demographic map. You know, I mean, it's possible if you're talking about like the distribution of, you know, white, you know, like white Americans versus Hispanic. And
yeah, but you'd also have to do it. You'd have to pin it to a reference point in time. Like, it would have to be
to a reference point in time.
Some
and then you
immigration wave.
Do it by city almost.
Yes, it'd have to be some immigration wave. Like, I know I've taken courses where they have talked, like I took Chicago history, and we talk about how the neighborhoods become the neighborhoods, and it's very much an immigration story. So, like, you can do that sort of map.
The demographics change over time.
Right, you can do that sort of map, but you have to you have to have some kind of anchoring point.
Yeah, he has no anchor at all. And actually, now that I'm looking at
The Roman
old
Empire map is not much better.
it's really bad. He really was generous with the Illyrians too.
Yeah, no, that should be cut significantly down.
Yeah.
The
He
Latin
was not so
the Latin
generous
should be
with
significantly smaller.
the Germanic areas either. Yeah, Latin should be significantly smaller. Anyway,
Like
let's
I
keep
would have a
going.
hard time pushing Latin culture much beyond Rome itself and down into Sicily, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe broadly. Let's keep going, or else we'll be here forever.
I know.
To dynamism. I mean, hell, the United States, and especially its political system, was actively modeled by its founders upon the Roman Republic. This is really just scratching the surface, but I need to explain the theory of civilizational comparison first, and then I'll show the shared histories from there, pointing towards
Here
what
we go.
direction our civilization is headed towards if it follows that history. God willing as well, how we can avoid the worst aspects and failures of classical civilization. There are a couple different cycles of history operating.
These text walls I don't typically spend too much time on because I'm 90% certain he hasn't read these books. But let's go.
On different time scales. I've covered these in differing detail before on this show, and as you'll see, these cycles' ability to see and comprehend the historic record is shocking if you dig even the slightest amount. There's a generational cycle that lasts around 80 years, a secular cycle that lasts around 250, or a civilizational that lasts 2,500 years. Oswald Spengler developed the idea of the civilizational cycle, showing how civilizations often have life cycles around 2,500 years. Some eerie examples of this are the classical civilization, which I discuss in more depth in this video.
What is that map?
Yeah, I know.
That looks like Alexander and Rome put together.
I think that is actually. He's his understanding of classical civilization is Greco-Roman civilization, so I think that's why he created that.
Well, even then, that doesn't fit
By
into.
period, though, that would be. I mean, most of the area around Iran and Iraq. I mean, that's the problem is he doesn't follow period because by the Roman Republic period or Roman Imperial period, wouldn't that be Sassanid or like
It's not
Republic of
Sassanid. It would be Parthian for the early Republican period, or the late Republican period would be Parthian. And Sassanid, it would be. I'm not quite remembering when the Sassanid dynasty started, but the Sassanid dynasty would last up until the point that Islam comes to the area. So, uh, there is no point that Rome expands that far east ever. And more to the point, if you're going to talk about Spengler, Rome doesn't really work because Rome itself, you can't take Rome and Macedon, and you can't take ancient Greece because that is way too long. Rome itself is almost long enough. No, Rome itself is almost long enough to fit into that model. Like, it doesn't work. Rome is like 2,200 years when you take the civilization from its traditional start date to the fall of Constantinople.
Yeah, it is.
And
It's
that's probably a point I should bring up, is that our understanding of this in modern scholarship has changed dramatically, where we don't really recognize this Byzantine Empire concept as not distinctly Roman anymore, because they still considered themselves Roman.
of course.
No, Pippa, there doesn't seem to actually be Crimea on this. Oh, it's over there. Never mind. There is Crimea on this map, but again, I don't know why
Hey, at
it's
least
like
you
that.
got the Bosphorus Kingdom.
The what?
The Bosphorian Kingdom, that sort of Hellenistic or Greek
Yeah.
power in southern Ukraine. So I mean, I'll give him props for that because not a lot of people know about it.
Anyway, let's continue and try to get to the meat of this before we go nuts.
Was founded around 1400 BC by the Mycenaeans. It reached the point of its greatest philosophic depth in the 5th century BC under Socrates, 1,000 years later, and then 300 years.
Okay, you cannot take the Mycenaeans and the Greeks and say they're the same civilization.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Because there's a very significant break in between those two. A very significant break with the Bronze Age collapse.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Mycenaean civilization, well, collapses.
The Greek Dark Age, the period
yes.
in between, I believe, right? Yeah.
And you have a radically different emergence of culture. The only reason I can see it coming into common conception is Homer and the Iliad, because the Iliad references city-states that probably existed, but not in the form that Homer is referencing.
Years later, was ruled by the superpower Republic of the Romans, that unified classical civilization with massive social problems stemming from it. Meanwhile, Western civilization, which I talk about in this video, was founded around 700 AD, reached the height of its philosophic development in the 7th.
Terrible.
I'm very, very, very perplexed.
I don't even know what to think of that one. The one that just
700 AD, like, what is now counting as Western civilization? And more to the point, did you look at that map? Because huge swaths of the West is not in Western civilization.
I know, and
I told you this was going to be vengeance.
Wow.
And more to the point, that kind of illustrates pinning your understanding of society to these ideas is kind of trans-historicizing them in a really weird way.
This is all over the place. Keep going. Let's see where he goes with this. We're already 3 minutes in, and we're just.
Well, when I did the initial video essay on one of his videos, I took 6 minutes and went on for 30 minutes. So,
This is the historical. Maybe I'm speaking too soon, but I feel like that this is like the historical equivalent of the movie Freddy Got Fingered.
Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like some sausages? Tom Green.
I love Tom Green, but
much lost. That's probably the best part of that movie, though, and it was in the trailer. Anyway, let's go.
1700s, 1,000 years later, and today in the 21st century, 300 years later, is run by a superpower republic with massive social problems that unified Western civilization. You can trace a very similar timescale for almost every civilization that it's uncanny. Although these civilizations do have similar life cycles, there are
only if you broaden the definition of civilization to the point that it has very little meaning.
Separate civilizational cycles that are repeated. The fascinating French historian Philippe Fabry has shown how civilizations in the same geographic region often have cycles much more similar to each other than other areas of the world.
Hang on a second. Here's our problem. Romans and Americans are not in similar geographic regions. Greeks and Europeans are technically in the same geographic region, but again, European is a very broad.
Greeks are Europeans. Greeks are.
Yeah, they are. Assyrians and Persians to the Seljuks and Ottoman Turks.
What does he mean by European here? Is he talking about like?
I think he's marking the fact that Greeks are slightly swarthier than everyone in Northern Europe. That at least. So yesterday he tweeted out, why does Europe feel bad about racism? They only had non-whites 60 years ago when they let them in. So I'm not entirely certain his understanding of, well, demographics works out either.
I don't know what he's trying to.
Don't worry, no one does.
This.
Oh, I forgot to dislike the video.
Yeah. This list that he made, I don't know who Fabry is. I don't know some of these historical theorists, but I don't think that any rational person would make something like this.
The odds are, because I don't remember reading this, the odds are that this is, again, because I said he doesn't pull from anything, or claims he doesn't pull from anything that is modern scholarship or recent scholarship. The odds are very good that this is a deeply reactionary take from 50 years ago.
Yeah, but it still doesn't follow any sort of
Let's look.
logic.
I'm not going to look too deeply at it because I just want to see when it's from.
Okay.
Fabre historian. Fabre disease. I don't want the disease.
Yeah, you make you pretty stupid.
Philippe Fabre. History books on Amazon.
I'm gonna put you through something. I already figured out what I'm gonna put you through next. And it's something
Apparently, this was published in March of 2022.
Oh.
Who is Philip Fabre is now my next question.
Let's keep going. I wanna break this. I want
Philippe.
to see more.
Not important enough to have a Wikipedia page, apparently.
He gives the common example, shared by another brilliant French historian, Amaury de Riencourt, that classical and Western European civilizations have had very similar life cycles. But you can also see this in the Hebrew, Arab, Assyrian, or Turkish empires in the Middle East, and Amaury suggests India and China have more similar cycles, and I could make the case for the same thing being true among African or New World civilizations that have more similar life cycles than areas outside of their region of the world. Why this is the case, I'm really not sure. Maybe the culture, geography, or genetics of certain continents predestine them towards differing historical trajectories.
Now we're on predestination. So my problem with trying to put things in historical cycles and is very much that no matter what I pick, like what interval you pick, like say something happens every 10 years, I can find somewhere selectively looking through history every 10 years to say, yes, this thing happened that supports my cycle theory. I don't like that particular mode of analysis, particularly because it means nothing.
I would agree with you on that.
Because I can just pick whatever I want to fit wherever I want, and I just expand or contract the cycle to get where I want to be.
That's why I'm not a very big fan of sort of meta arguments in history, because so much is contingent on geography, you know, random events occurring, you know, that are outside of the, you know,
Well, I think
human
it's
control.
what I think it's telling is that you don't see a whole lot of PhD candidates writing those kinds of books. You don't see a lot of people with
No,
advanced degrees writing them.
I can't. Honestly, when people do their PhD, they're usually selecting some. They can't do broad arguments like that. And actually, the broader the argument, the more skill you have to have as a historian. And
Well, and
many of these sort of, you know, meta historical books,
aren't written by historians.
they're not written by historians. A person, one example, and I think it has its own merits, but you've probably heard of Jared Diamond, Guns, Germs, and Steel, correct?
Yes, everyone has.
Yeah.
Hang on.
He is not a historian either,
He is not, and
but
that's why his book falls flat in several places.
yeah,
The problem,
there's some merit to geography playing a role in how, you know, civilizations developed, but I mean, he just places way too much emphasis on that.
yeah, and that's like meta-analysis for history doesn't work
No,
because
it doesn't.
historians. That's why historians are almost always diving deep into things, like very deep.
Yeah, as I was saying, you know, you don't see PhD candidates doing a broad topic. It's usually, in depth, focusing on, an issue within a specific subject matter. Because when you do broad arguments, especially if you're doing something, as detailed and intricate as a history PhD, I mean, if you were to do a comparative study, for example, on like a really, really good comparative study on, say, policies of Mao's China, comparing them uh, with Stalinism, you have to learn Chinese. You have to have some competent Chinese. You have to have competent Russian, and
You're looking at
even
3 years.
even just to do the the secondary, like, source material, just to look at the scholarship, that entails sometimes learning additional languages,
Yeah,
because the scholarship isn't limited to English.
you're looking at 2-3 years of research packed into 2 years.
Yeah, for sure.
However, with all these civilizations, for the most part, the modern West and United States share the most with the classical world and the Roman Republic, which I will show by comparing their historical trajectories in.
I feel like that's just, I don't know, maybe this is just kind of, I feel like that's just his own sort of perception, his own, I don't know.
I don't necessarily think that having your own perception is bad. Like, history is revision ultimately, but
It is, but
gotta base it in some pretty serious work. And to be frank, he simply hasn't done the work.
I feel like a lot of people compare classical civilization to sort of our Anglo one. And I mean, obviously there's influences in, classical civilization influenced our form of government. And there's other, factors, but, you know, Roman culture and, the culture of that world, that time period, is radically different from what we have now. I mean, am I right with that? I think.
Yeah, even the political construct is incredibly different. Like, I have a feeling I know where this is going to go. We'll see in a minute, though.
In this video,
I just want to state one thing. You know how whenever one watches.
Hi everybody, I'm Rudyard, the guy behind Whatifalthist.
Sorry. Why is YouTube behaving this poorly? Keep talking. I'm fixing it.
Right with that, I think.
Yeah, even the political construct is incredibly different.
I feel
like, I have a feeling
part of the reason why people associate classical civilization with sort of this, Anglo American, British Germanic civilization is because when they watch movies,
some countries
they see, for whatever reason, they give like Romans a British accent.
I'm gonna be.
Yeah, that is a really weird thing.
Problematic.
That is really weird in my mind.
Classic victim of this. Yeah, I feel like he's a classic victim of this. Just, general trope.
Pulling very heavily from Amaury de Riancourt's book, The Coming Caesars, which spends 300 pages.
About the Imperial Roman army, the legions, and what they did. They don't really, they the level of sort of like bestial cruelty that they inflicted on other people. I mean, I don't really think of.
It's probably better
to say that
to think of Rome or the Roman Empire as a giant extortion operation. So a Roman legion rolls up on a place and they look around and say, "This is nice stuff. We would like this stuff. If you give us your stuff, we will give you the protection of Rome. If you don't give us the stuff, we'll take it anyway." So a lot of places gave them their stuff. And the places that didn't got into a little fight. Sometimes very big fights.
I mean, isn't that how a lot of empires, I mean, not all empires have functioned that way. Persia certainly was not.
So what constitutes imperialism really depends on what empire you're talking about when, and how they behave
Yeah.
and what they do. So like the Dutch in Africa behave radically differently to the Romans. The English all over the world behave radically differently to the Romans. This particular model that uh, Rome really kind of works off of, and to a significantly lesser extent, uh, some of the other empires at the time, works off of, is kind of uh, unique for the time. Uh, like the Persian Empire also really depends on what period you're talking about. And again, I'm not
I
an
was
a
talking about more of the era of the Greek city-states
the the the,
in
the
before
Achaemenid dynasty. Yeah,
sort of
like again, I'm not
Cyrus's Persia or Darius's Persia.
I'm not as that is kind of the method and mode that they would have operated on. Uh, like they would have initially like they would have initially gone to them and said, "We like your stuff. We'd like to have your stuff in exchange for all of these things." Uh, and again, the Persian Empire is a pretty long-lasting body with a number of different dynasties all involved, and they all are kind of different. And I'm not an ancient historian, so I can't, totally speak with authority
I'm
on it.
not either. I'm not either. But I always thought it was sort of a hegemonic.
And well, that's an argument that
So
I have made in the past. Like I explicitly in a paper, uh, actually, hang on, I explicitly in the paper, we're going to be joined.
cool.
Explicitly in a paper, argue that. Uh,
Are you there?
yes, I'm here. I explicitly argue that Greece under the Delian League is a hegemony, and it therefore counts as an empire. Uh, and I compared it. That was that paper I did a while back on uh, ancient early empires, and I took Rome, uh, Athens in the Delian League, and much to my utter pain and sorrow, the Akkadian Empire. Don't do the Akkadian Empire on any kind of research analysis, kids, because you are
Well,
no longer a
there's a lot of,
historian. You're now an archaeologist.
of course, there's so much speculation the
Like
further
I'm
back.
sitting here, I was sitting there trying to write this research analysis, and I'm sitting there staring at a picture of a stone tablet from 3,000 years ago. I'm like, this was not my best thought out plan.
No, no. Akkad is too far back in time.
It's just like there wasn't that much
That's
writing, and
interesting.
like the writing I had was
I was
fragmented.
I was always impressed by, because the farther back you go, the less survives, and the less material you have to work off of, and even when you're talking about many many thousands of years later, I mean several thousand years later, I'm always amazed at the work that colleagues do with Kievskoros, like, you know, because there's even with that you don't have a lot to work off of as compared to more recent history.
You're kind of sitting there trying to fill in gaps when you're working with ancient history, like, which is kind of why I
Yeah,
steered away from
that's
it.
why I've never. That's why I've steered away from ancient history too. A lot of people love it. I like it. I mean,
There was some
honestly,
fascinating, like what has come out of classical history and ancient history. Some fascinating stories, and like I am fascinated by the scholarship, the combination of archaeology and history that has been illuminating what happened in the Bronze Age collapse. Like that's fascinating stuff, but it's also
it's fascinating too now. Some of the work that is being done in Israel, for example, on Canaanites, that's very fascinating too, because ultimately that leads to all three major religions that exist today. But what you find out is basically you know the God, the Abrahamic God, is a sort of adaptation of a Canaanite hill tribe storm god.
And there's a lot of really interesting things that is going on if you read the Old Testament as a critical work as opposed to a religious text. Like there's a couple different gods going into Yahweh that seem to pop up. It's something else, and like these people are doing fantastic and amazing work. Just
They are, yeah.
not up my alley. That's all.
No, not up mine either, and it requires a very special skill set.
You have to have a knack for dead languages.
Yeah, knowing dead languages is a big thing. I'm amazed, that there are people who just the fact that I believe Sumerian actually has been decoded. There's some Sumerian scholars at University of Chicago in their Near Eastern civilization department, I think.
One day, Pippa, we are probably going to talk at length about the Bronze Age collapse and be totally out of our depth. But for now, it is not aliens. I'm just waiting. We're waiting for a moment.
We have to, we have to do, we have to do like some special episode someday on Von Däniken, the Chariots of the Gods.
Oh, slowly I lose my mind. I could just I could grow my hair out for that and get it all fluffy. Aliens. We probably get sued.
Daedalus, Professor.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Literally, yeah. Daedalus, PhD of history, DeVry University.
Oh, do they give out PhDs?
I don't think they do.
Yeah, I don't think they. Is DeVry even a thing anymore? Like DeVry was definitely.
They are a thing actually. One of my friends just started taking IT classes there.
They have embraced their identity as a glorified jobs program. Then.
Yeah. Are we good with the streaming?
We are still waiting for a hot second for special guest. And then I have to reconfigure the cameras anyway, which we'll do. Let's just keep going for a few minutes. I'm sure we'll come to something soon.
Okay.
Is explaining the comparisons between these two civilizations, while Fabre has expanded upon this, and Spengler was the person who designed the underlying theory they're basing this upon. To reach the point of the Roman Republic in the modern U.S., we
when you talk about the historians that have always impressed me are the ones who are able to make convincingly I don't know if I'd call them meta arguments or arguments with a wide breadth. People who understand the bigger picture in a certain area. That takes a lot of skill, and it takes a very, very intelligent, critical thinking person.
There's a lot of alternate history in general. There's a lot of places to just go wrong. The best alternate history is take an event and explore changes based off that event. The worst alternate history is take a massive question like, what if Nazi Germany won the war? Which is a really surprisingly common question for alternate historian type people, which is kind of alarming in and of itself.
That's something that given the nature of the work I do, that is something that I've that is a sort of speculative history that I've engaged in, but I look at it through what would have happened likely to Ukraine and its population in the event of
they'd almost certainly all be dead.
almost certainly, yeah. All dead or assimilated forcefully. The ones that had valuable racial characteristics. At least in the eyes of to Germany, but yeah, that is an argument that I explored, but it's not. It's very hard to you know to do that in a very broad way. Hello?
Hello, excellent.
Hi. Oh, nice to meet you, Hetman.
How
Greetings.
do you want to be addressed? Because I know you talked about using a different name.
Oh, touch grass is fine, or TG. That's easy for y'all.
TG? I'm gonna call you TG.
All right.
All right, cool.
We are welcoming Touchgrass on. I have the stream up of Whatifalthist video, and we are suffering through it.
Okay, cool. Wait, where is it exactly?
It is in. I have the studio stream up, so it's in the Discord stream.
Okay. All right. Wait, why can I not see this? I see Hetman's video. I don't see anything else.
Yeah, I'm actually not able to see.
Why is it not up? Oh, it must have gone away when I did the thing.
Yeah, dude,
Hang
I
on.
think you're lying to us.
I am. It's all my fault.
Where are we streaming right now?
We have been live for a little bit, yes.
Yeah,
now
yeah,
it's
that's what I
live.
was thinking.
There we go.
All right, cool. Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. All right, awesome. Yeah, continue on as if
You need to see the cultural context they came from. In both the cases of Western Europe and the Greek peninsula, there was a previous advanced civilization, the Minoans or the Romans. Barbarians from
So if we go to Minoans and we say, again, we run into...
He's got
There's some evidence that, so in particular Minoans, there's some evidence that long before the Sea Peoples even get there, like the Minoans have had a falling out amongst themselves and are having rebellions due to famine. So like nailing down that entire timeline for 1200 BCE is really difficult, but it looks like Minoans and Troy have a little falling out vis-a-vis the Iliad, and then the famines start hitting widespread, and Crete, Egypt, and Sumeria and all that get hit by the Sea People. Calling them barbarians is, again, 50-year-old scholarship.
Of course it is. But
I think probably what happened was Whatifalthist had just assumed.
Yeah, almost certainly. Particularly because most of the best scholarship about the fall of before the period prior to the Greek Dark Ages has only happened in the last 20 years.
That being Mycenae and the Frankish Empire. After this followed a heroic age which had many myths of heroic deeds like those
what
of
the hell? The Frankish Empire?
I assume we're going to Charlemagne without really talking about anything that happened in between there.
I think we're talking about Napoleon, actually.
He didn't bring up the sack of, what was his name? God, my brain is not working. The leader of the Visigoths, I believe.
Well, Rome was sacked several times in its history, so...
Yeah, but like he makes a big jump there.
Yes, we have skipped over a considerable amount of history. Gauls, damn it, now I can't remember the name.
And I don't believe that Charlemagne sacked Rome at all.
He did not.
He consolidated. He consolidated a Holy Roman Empire.
He's like a couple hundred years after the Visigoths roll over Rome.
Yeah.
Roland, King Arthur,
200, maybe 300.
Siegfried and the like in the West, or Hercules the Trojan War, or Jason and the Argonauts in Greece. However, that empire fell apart quickly after further barbarian invasions from the north, those being the Dorians or Vikings. The vestiges of the previous civilization survived in myth either through the Catholic Church or the myths of the Minoans and Bronze Age world. The artistic style...
a considerable amount of the myths of the Minoans was preserved by Islamic culture.
And values of the previous civilizations were forgotten for centuries and
Wait a
then
minute.
relearned when
Go back. Just hold on here. I thought that they still haven't translated the Linear B tablets, so we
They
don't really know a whole lot about the Minoan civilization.
they haven't. Most of what we know, though, comes from Greece, which comes from Islam. Oh my God! No, I'm not looking at things right now. Excuse me.
when these societies had a renaissance, roughly 700 years after the fall of Minoan or Roman civilization. In both cases, there was division between two big blocks. For brutal simplification, the mostly land-facing Germans and the Dorians who destroyed the older states, and the more seafaring Ionians or Latin peoples. The Ionians and Latins both reintroduced civilization to the Dorians and Germans. Meanwhile, there was a savage peripheral large tribal confederacy in the northern wastes, those being the Slavs or Thracians, that gained...
Yikes.
This guy is so full of crap.
Told you.
It's not only that he reads, it's not about the scholarship he reads, it's the fact that he doesn't read at all.
Yes. This
Wait,
portrayal.
Heaven, is this your first time?
This is his first Whatifalthist
Is this
video.
Heaven's first time with Whatifalthist?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy.
This is like, I thought that Daedalus was gonna, when he said he was gonna get revenge against me for the last video, I thought it was gonna be like, something, oh, this guy has some, like he's right here, kind of knows a little bit about history, but he's full of crap. This person obviously doesn't read. He's all over the place.
Yes, these comparisons don't hold up on any real detail level.
94K subscribers. What does he have? Like a bunch of fake YouTube profiles?
I don't know the answer to that question, but there are like people.
And then Magellan TV sponsors him. Oh my God.
Apparently,
I don't think this really comes from like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Apparently, you can get sponsorships for everything.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you have the numbers at the end of the day, like it doesn't. You think Magellan TV gives a shit? Like,
No,
well,
they're looking for subscribers.
Yeah, but I think he does. I mean, probably reads like a little bit, but I think more he obviously is getting. He's got this information from somewhere. You don't just like randomly know about Ionians and Thracians. No, I think probably he just watches a lot of like pop history, like a lot of other pop history YouTubers do, and they just put that all in together and just be like, oh, let me make a video about this thing I feel strongly about, even though I haven't looked into it that much besides a bunch of YouTube videos. Yeah.
But I've read a lot of dated books on ancient history, and they're at least like usually well researched, especially if they have like a good shelf life, that people still read them today. And it's obvious that he just this makes me feel, I have horrible stage fright. People could probably notice it, but this makes me a lot more confident going forward of making some video essays.
Yeah, anytime I feel imposter syndrome coming on, I think about Whatifalthist, and it goes away.
Yeah, you guys were right. This has to be the worst history presentation I've ever seen. I would venture to say, I remember when I was I think I was in 6th grade, I did a presentation on the military of the Assyrian Empire, and it was way better than this.
Didn't we do the mummify the chicken in 6th grade? I think we did. We did mummify the chicken in 6th grade.
James, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We mummified the chicken.
Yes. Yeah. That was part of the Egypt unit. we packed a chicken in salt until it for about a month. I'm not entirely certain how we got away with doing that in a classroom, but here we are, 30 years later.
That's fucking metal. Holy shit. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how exactly you guys want to do this, but for a lot of other what if all, like they're kind of all the same, and they get it basically just comes to the him just saying like things that are vaguely true, like it's obviously pointing to something that somewhat occurred, but all of the like little details that necessarily have to be true for his point to stand don't actually stand, and he just says shit. So if you want, like, I guess it would be good if we maybe like skip around because it seems to be he's having specific like there's certain points throughout all of this, like what is it, rise to empire, the fall of the republic, and the last part is about rethinking the America's role.
Oh, you looked ahead.
Let's
predominance much later.
No, well,
Merchant minority
there's
from the
key
Levant,
moments.
The Jews
I'm
or
looking
Phoenicians reintroduced commerce
laptop.
during the Dark Ages
Can you
and
see it on
became
the?
distrusted.
Hold on, can you go to that description?
Well, they took technology from the larger and more advanced.
Yeah, go to the description. Oh, it doesn't show that?
Not on mine.
Okay, for some reason, for me, it
Hang on
shows
a second.
Key moments. Does it not have any divisions in it? For you?
Not on my laptop for some reason.
Yeah, I don't see any divisions. For me, it says so. The key divisions are so Europe and Greece, which we're already going through. Culture to civilization, that starts at 931. The Western republics, which starts at 2027. The rise to empire, which starts at 2908. The fall of the republic, which starts at 3453. And rethinking America's role, which is the last at 3930.
All right. Keep those in mind, and I'm going to move ahead to the next one, and then we will see if it's anything here.
Yeah, just kind of get a taste.
Yeah. Models. Now we get to both Socrates and Rousseau's era. This is a tipping point that Spengler made a huge point about. It's probably the most decisive era in a civilization's development, this being the move from culture to civilization. Culture is when a society's still young and it's determining what direction it's going to go into, and still has a lot of creativity. Meanwhile, civilization is what happens when it's largely figured out what its philosophy and direction is, and then solidifies and carries that out. This tipping from culture to civilization takes centuries and follows a roughly similar direction in each of the world's societies. For China, the Greeks and Indians, their move from culture to civilization started around 500 BC and finally set into its mold around 200 BC. You struggle to find any cultural forms that changed in these civilizations after 200 BC.
I beg your pardon?
If you don't include the massive and forced changes from
I'm sorry? Nothing changed in China after 500 BCE? China would be very shocked to hear this.
Well, hold on, Daedalus. They still cultivated rice for all that time.
Ah, yes, rice.
You ever thought about that?
Rice. How could I be so stupid?
Rice never changed.
Colonialism that occurred in India and China thousands of years later due to Western attack. The West's civilizational cycles ended thousands of years later, which is why it was so much more creative than Asia's civilizations when it smashed into them in the 16th through 20th centuries, since the West only reached this point starting with the French Revolution 200 years ago. The tipping point from culture to civilization occurs when a society starts to formulate its logical system. This is since barbarians are close to the earth, and they act as their biology demands, giving them vigor. However, once the elite becomes urban and society needs to manage...
Oh, God.
This is a train wreck.
Oh, God.
This is a train.
Oh, barbarians have
vigor. The barbarians are telluric. They're telluric, that's why.
I watched recently a I think I'll have to send it to you guys, but I watched recently. It's a person who's really into Proto-Indo-Europeanism, sort of the emergence of Indo-European civilizations, language.
What would have been called Aryan civilization before somebody ruined that word?
An argument somewhat similar, but less. more detailed, which I mean, it's a BS argument in any case. But he argued that Indo-Europeans, so they were pastoral. They were, the gene to process milk or dairy products, like originated, or I don't know, like I don't know how they came to this argument, but he said that when the Indo-Europeans invaded Europe, they had more vigor because they had more energy from the milk that they drank and like more strength. That's just really
That's
stupid.
again, we have firmly left the realm of history behind for archaeology. But so like there is something to the fact that there was easily domesticatable animals, which makes it easier to do tasks, which makes it easier to do agriculture, so on and so forth. So like you have sheep in the Middle East and you have cattle and horses and all these things are there. And so you see cities get built and they get larger and they have diseases and all that stuff. And so you see populations. But take like North and South America, for example. You have whole tribes of indigenous peoples on the plains, and their principal animal of size is a buffalo. You can't really domesticate a buffalo. You can't do it even now. You're just basically hoping it stays in its pen. So, like, they don't build that kind of massive infrastructure that requires domestication. So, like, there's the milk is not really the argument there. The principal argument is this is what resources are available and how it can be utilized.
I think it's also just simply why. I think that's the more big one because, like, for example, I'm not like I'm not the historian or whatever here, but I know a thing or two about this. Um, Sumer, they had their issues with pastoralist groups, which is what led to the Akkadian and later Semitic empires. And this is something I learned from Richard Bulliet, especially that there's kind of a contradiction, if you will, between agricultural societies and pastoralist societies, because pastoralists and agriculturalists need those lands for different things.
Of course,
One need.
Pastoralists are raiding cultures.
Yeah, exactly, and that's I think that's more of the reasons to why. Because also keep in mind, like even if let's say they had more like I don't know, they had like milk energy, they're also smaller populations. Pastoralists can't accumulate a larger populations compared to agriculturalist groups.
Of course,
And like raiding is the end result behavior, but like more to the point, they're nomadic and they have to move. And they have to move their herds, which causes them to sweep across. They have a significant amount of space where they start, but eventually they sort of spill out, and you see these waves, like you see the Huns come and the Mongols and the Timurids. So like raiding ends up being the result, but not necessarily the principal motivator.
Manage people rather than fight the natural world,
absolutely.
It loses its sense of realness. When the elite becomes urban and a logical system develops, what you're seeing with a set logical system is a society chooses what assumptions it wants to follow and ignores the others. Since different civilizations have different systems of logic.
What's the next timestamp? Because this is just this decadence argument all over again.
Okay. 2027. That is the Western Republic.
Europeans and Americans as liberators, which leads us to the next segment. Now here we get to the main point of the comparisons between the U.S. and the Roman Republic.
Finally,
now
only
let's start
halfway
with the key
through.
difference. That the United States is a country of direct European ancestry that was ported abroad, while the Romans were just an ethnic group that was pretty close, all things considered, to the Greeks, and part of a roughly similar cultural proximity. However, both America and Rome are nations built off driving out the kings and establishing a republic. The American Republic was consciously modeled off the Roman system, for Christ's sake, which is why it shares institutions like the Senate. The early American Republic.
So they have a Senate, ergo they are modeled off of the same. So the Roman Senate is a particular body with near total authority for its period of time. It appoints its own leaders for the city. And it has powers to appoint particularly more powerful leaders in moments of crisis. The American system of government has a Senate as a upper house and the House of Representatives, a bicameral legislature, as two separate things. And they have divided powers between them, and neither one can appoint an executive.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
the
I think
the words are the same, and that's really about it.
yeah, I think oftentimes the reason why the reason why even he's saying this, or why often people say this, is because of the education around the development of the American and French Republic. We don't realize that there were republics just prior, like let's say, for example, the Dutch Republic or other systems that utilize
Wouldn't the Polish
more similar systems.
yeah, wouldn't the Polish same of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth sort of constitute a republic as well?
Yeah. There's
Effectively,
plenty
yeah.
of different systems. Even the British, after 1688, incorporated multiple systems, and even the the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois, were apparently an inspiration to this as well. It wasn't just. I would say probably it's more to say that if it was based off of Rome, it was more based off of a modern interpretation that was pretty bad of Rome, rather than like Rome proper.
There's a certain there's a certain modeling of idea behind Rome. There's not necessarily like reaching back for Rome as a kind of anchor point to legitimize the effort. And like there, I can certainly believe, given how education works and how the founders were educated, that they were aware of what was said about Rome at the time. But I don't think Rome really inspires the Constitution that much. Like the Constitution has very significant systems built into it. Like this, what George Washington famously takes the mantle of Cincinnatus as his example for how the American leaders should behave, and that's definitely a product of his classical education. But that doesn't suggest that we modeled the executive off of the system of Roman consuls.
Yeah, the founding fathers weren't like. It would also be kind of idiotic to do so. I think the founding fathers knew, like, even if we wanted to, like, one for one, uh, we can't. Like, it would have to be something.
Yeah, it's
very different.
And the French Revolution kind of resulted in very similar structures happening, like rhetorical structures of reaching back for Rome. But like there's republics all throughout Italy, throughout most of its history.
Of course.
There's republics all throughout Eastern Europe. There are representative systems of government that come up before, and I don't think you can really trace any of them back to a particular Roman system.
Public tried to learn as many lessons as possible from the Roman system, such as combining an aristocratic and populist branch of the legislature, in America being the Senate and the House, being wary of professional militaries, and lots of checks and balances between different branches of the government to prevent tyranny.
So Rome wasn't really wary of a professional military. Especially as you move out throughout, like you have 2,000 years of history to go through, and they maintain a professional military for most of it. Uh, but what they do is they only have a limited amount of population to put into the military at any given time, and a limited campaigning season to fight wars in, which drives a lot of Rome's decisions in its early history militarily. So like that's a stretch, and yes, you can definitely say that about the United States, but that doesn't last very long. Like by 1812, we realized what a horrible mistake we had by not having a core of a military to build off of in times of crisis.
The early Americans and Romans
It wasn't
both
also the
carried a
opposite the case that they would. Oh, sorry. That the opposite was the case. Like they would worry. I thought also that, like, I mean, I know for quite some time or different periods within Roman history, it was illegal to have for non-military personnel to have weapons in Rome, because there were instances. I believe even right after Caesar died, there was instances where you'd have politicians and they would just get like gladiators or any other like mercenaries, and they would have like little fights. I mean, that was a huge concern as well because it's quite obvious.
Yes, well, there's rules like marching your legion across uh, the river into Rome and Latium proper was against the law,
The
and
Potomac.
not yes, the
There it was.
Potomac. That's the one. No, damn it, the river escapes me at the moment. But they did this structurally, so like Roman legionnaires could return to Rome, but they had to take themselves out of the color of authority and not wear all weapons and armor. Like they had to be basically act as civilians at this point, because they specifically wanted to keep someone's army from occupying Rome and taking control of the Senate. A Tiber, yes, thank you, everyone. It's been a long day. Rubicon, yeah, that's it. I am having a day apparently with geography. It helps when I look at maps. But
I said the fucking Potomac. What the fuck is wrong with me? That's literally the United States. I'm an idiot.
I thought you were being sarcastic. like sarcasm.
No, that was like a dead ass. Like I just had an issue.
No,
right
you were being sarcastic. That's what was happening. Sarcasm is a very serious danger on this show.
Let's just say that. Okay, let's continue.
Tremendous amount about political freedom or keeping their tyrants from seizing power. Both put an extremely high value on their legal liberties and their ancient law codes, which originate from their founding, which are viewed in nearly religious terms. In America's case, that being the Constitution, in Rome's their legal code.
A significant portion of the American legal code is derived from British common law. A significant portion of the protections built into the Constitution is derived from British common law. And every culture has seen itself as free, and they have valued those freedoms. No one has run around going, you know what, we are quite oppressed and okay with it.
The Russians.
No, even the Russians think they're free. They just define freedom in really weird ways. Like you know the words, the Russian national anthem. They spend 5 minutes essentially talking about how awesome Russia is, how Russia has made them all free. And it's really catchy. And that's why we all know it, but that's what they're talking about.
Of course.
Excellent, thank you.
Societies prize justice and rule of law as some of their dominant virtues. Both the Americans and Romans shared the same can-do spirit. In Rome, this manifested more so in war and manliness, in which the Romans showed an implacable spirit and willingness to face death and suffering with a determination that shocked everyone else. An example of this is in the Punic Wars, in which the Romans had to build a navy from scratch to fight the Carthaginians, who were the dominant naval power and had been for centuries. And the Romans invented a totally new type of naval technology, built a navy with absolutely no experience, lost tens of thousands of lives in failed navies, but kept pushing. Another example of this implacable can-do Roman spirit was with a population of only 5 million under their rule. They lost 3 battles in the Second Punic War, of over 60,000 men in each battle, and a majority of their male upper class, but the Romans kept fighting until they won the war. America is similar with its own famous...
Chat. Go subscribe. Go do it. Go do it. Go do it. Go do it. Second.
Subscribe to TG's
channel. I don't have anything there, but yeah, subscribe if you want.
Second. So, I don't necessarily think you call this a can-do spirit. Like, Rome obviously took it on the nose in the First Punic War for much of it, and it took quite some time. But they did this thing because they assumed that the conflict with Carthage was an existential one. The Second Punic War, it was an existential conflict, and they don't just like For a time, Hannibal crosses the Alps, and everyone's like, "Oh God, Hannibal's crossed the Alps." Like River Trebia, he crushes a Roman legion. The Battle of Cannae, he crushes a Roman legion twice its size. So, like, they threw a lot of troops into those fights, yes, but then they turn around and they develop a term we still use to this day about called Fabian tactics, about shadowing them, refusing to engage Hannibal in a decisive battle, and wearing him down until eventually Hannibal's forced to return to Africa. Story that's really told, and like it's sad because this is a fairly pivotal section of military history that establishes a lot of themes that we see running throughout modern scholarship. And that's just a short 5-second version of it.
Can-do spirit, which manifested more so in technology and economics than strictly war. Although Americans have often been ruthless in waging war in the same way the Romans have been, and both countries are in competition to be the best engineers ever. Examples of the American can-do spirit include building the Transcontinental Railroad, feeding millions of starving Europeans, and rebuilding Western Europe's economy after the World Wars, America's massive technological breakthroughs, and all.
He's sort of just choosing to see these parallels when they're not necessarily there.
There is significant effort that had to be put into things like the Marshall Plan and building the Transcontinental Railroad. I don't think you like file the Marshall Plan under can-do spirit. The Marshall Plan is very much a cynical move.
Incorrect.
Oh,
incorrect. Have you not read like any history of the United States?
Apparently
Every book
not.
literally starts with, "Once upon a time, there was a country called America, and it had a can-do spirit."
Yeah,
look at them go.
But we also have a very famous.
A lot of recent started from that, but
we also have a very
there are
famous
those
history book called "Lies My Teacher Told Me." So checkmate.
Or there's also the People's History of the United States, which is
It's too far for me to grab, but it's also in the library.
All that stuff. The Americans
It's interesting to me with that
assimilate-
point, though, on Whatifalthist, is that unironically, there's a lot of people who have that view. Like it's way more common than anything close to correct. That basically the reason why the United States or any other country does a thing is because they just have the wrong attitude about it, or they have the right attitude about it. We just have the right attitude, the right manner, and that's what we just have a can-do attitude. We're just there to help, man.
That's a horrible way of explaining history.
Yeah.
It's
but it's so easy.
It's extremely
That's
easy.
the beauty of it.
I think that people have this idea of what America is, and that's sort of like that popular idea, that spirit of what American is, that if you come here, work very hard, you can achieve a dream. And I mean, to a degree that is true for other people, but like, that doesn't explain that. That's not an explanation of how events transpire. It just really is way too simplistic.
There is a book that has come out just this year, actually, that I picked up. It's a collection of essays, and it is edited by, among other people, Kevin Kruse, who is an American historian of civil rights. And the book is called Myth America, and it kind of lays out mostly right-wing fictions of what America is and offers historical counterarguments to them. The second chapter, I think, is titled American Exceptionalism. And I had not, prior to reading this essay, known the particular point of this term, but the term results from one of the internationals where an American communist goes to Stalin and explains why the communist revolution hasn't happened yet, despite the fact that it was fully expected to. And Stalin coins the term American exceptionalism out of sarcasm. It gets picked up again and again throughout American history and like really rammed home by, of all people, the recent boogeyman of of American history, Newt Gingrich. I thought that was a fascinating story, and it's a great book you should pick up, everyone.
Tough reputation of the Romans, but this manifested more so in the cowboy and frontiersman fighting nature rather than the legionary fighting savage barbarians, due to the nature of both societies' frontiers they are pushing against. Another similarity is the compound ethnic group, in that not that many Americans are descendant from the first people who settled in Jamestown or came off the Mayflower.
Stop real quick. Who was the historian who wrote the frontier hypothesis, or the he was an American historian that sort of Turner, I think his name is.
Hang on.
But I can't remember.
That's what the Google is for.
Yeah. Have you read or heard of that essay?
Frederick Jackson Turner in 1893. I have heard a little bit of it.
Frederick Jackson Turner. Yeah.
The problem with the frontier hypothesis was that it speculates that the reason for development of American history is that there's so much, air quotes, unsettled land.
Yeah.
The land was settled. There were people there. They just weren't white.
Of course, yeah.
Wait, what's up with this image? This is in 2045?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, you know the main issue with this is that
2045 hasn't happened yet.
Dividing light. Well, not really that exactly, but rather that white and Hispanic are divided. Like usually in a census, you have white Hispanic,
white,
and black Hispanic. And the thing is that they usually don't bring up about this, and the whole thing about like, oh, we're gonna be more brown in the future, is that most of the Hispanics that are moving into the United States, such as my family, are white Hispanics. They're not like black Hispanics.
It would appear that this particular diagram is made by the Brookings Institution. I wouldn't count on them to be racially magnanimous.
I mean, the classification system in the United States already sucks, but it's not even adhering to that classification system. It's
no, it's a conservative think tank trying to justify voting suppression. So the sources is a problem, all over the place.
In the same way, not many people in the Roman Empire were descended from the men who founded the village of Rome under Romulus and Remus. The average white American is an amalgam of English, German, Scottish, Irish, and half a dozen other ethnicities, while the Romans assimilated countless local peoples like the Etruscans, Samnites, Northern real ethnic group, campaigned.
Yes, it was a very weird map. This map is slightly better, but you can definitely tell he didn't make it.
That's what I was just going to say. This isn't his map.
And the like. Both the Romans and Americans are some of the best assimilators to America in the 19th century, and the local Italian peoples, and then followed by the populations of their vast empires.
I can't speak really for Rome without diving really into a lot of primary sources and looking at it. But I don't think America is really an assimilator in the way that people describe it. Like we talk about the melting pot, and that's just not the case.
It's a mosaic, more of a mosaic.
Like you take a look, you go into any of the bigger cities, and then the shell, the scaffolding of the cities are these ethnic neighborhoods, and some of them have grabbed on and held on to their identities that they developed. It's like Chicago, I would say, is a great example for you and me, Hetman, because we spent a considerable amount of time there. But you have places like Greektown, which is very Greek, and it's held on to that identity. Or you have Little Ukraine, or you have huge swaths of neighborhoods that are just held on to their ethnic identities. You see, you have entire sections of the north side
with certain neighbor. Oh, you're gonna bring up like Devon Avenue and a lot of the South Asian communities there.
Yeah, There's huge numbers of
yeah.
communities. Like,
The thing is that certain, and I'm not a sociologist. I'm not, I can't bother to tackle the question of how some ethnic neighborhoods last. They're well anchored, and certain ones, like say Chicago's Little Italy, the people disperse over time. A lot of it has to do with upward mobility and moving somewhere, like buying a bigger house somewhere, moving somewhere more economically advantageous. But everyone's still here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. But yeah, like no, I mean the demographics of cities do change over time. Yeah, you do see the
Specific areas. Once they leave that, which they often do, like you get out of the city, you start to suburbanize. Was that's when you become the American proper, and then when you say, like, let's say, oh, my family, they come from Greece, or like you say, I come from Greece, or like I'm Greek. It's like, oh well, have you been to Greece? No. Do you know any Greek?
now we come back. Hang on.
Oh, you lost track.
I'm gonna play.
Okay.
I've lost the stream. I'm gonna play with this for a moment. Hi, in time. Someone let me know if we are live. Titan, anyone, really, frankly.
are we live?
I think so. Let me check. Stream.
We're trapped.
45 kpps.
But you have I was just going off what
Okay, we're
tall
still
grass,
alive.
right?
Yeah. Oh no, touch grass.
Touch grass. Just going off with what you said, you know, certain ethnic groups in the United States lose their identity over time. Like one major group would be probably German Americans. Because of mainly due to actually the two world wars, there was a large sort of tendency among them to distance themselves from their heritage, and it's actually they're the largest white ethnic group in the United States as far as numbers, and a lot of people have you know a little bit of German ancestry in the United States, but like Italians, for example, like trying to think like for my father's family, like we cook a lot of Italian food, but it's not a lot of the stuff we make and a lot of the food that people eat, in restaurants, it's not really like the Italian food that you would find in Italy. It developed here. And that has to do with it's the same thing with various ethnic groups here, like Italian American, Polish American. And at some point, these groups, they really can't say that they're the same as
Yeah.
the countries of their ancestors. They're different. They developed here, but
And
still
rather they're American.
they hold on to certain traditions, and it'll be interesting to see how some of the more recent immigrants develop over time. Like if they develop like a distinctly American version of their culture, and you can see it already with certain second generation people.
Yeah, it seems to be that, like, even the second, especially, it's just like to the second generation. I mean, yeah, it's so that's why I say, yeah, we do definitely assimilate. But I wouldn't say it's the same way as, like, they didn't have, like, I don't know, maybe I don't know enough, but there wasn't like a Roman nation like there's an American
Well,
nation.
there's not a
Yeah,
concept of Roman
nation at all.
ethnicity or like Latin ethnicity at the time. The concept of ethnicity comes a lot, like you're not talking like you're talking 19th century.
Yeah, like I think
A lot of identity leading up to sort of the rise of the idea of a nation state or an ethnic group. A lot of identity was confessional first and foremost, and local.
yeah, this concept of state and like calling Rome, like, describing Rome in these terms is really transhistoricizing a lot of very modern descriptive concepts, like the very concept of the state itself, which, if we say the state,
Ukrainian historians who are not a lot of the historians in Ukraine haven't really left that era of nationalist history making. I mean, the good ones, like colleagues of mine, certainly have, but like for example, they look at the Kozak Hetmanite, for example, and well, I mean, you can trace the beginnings of sort of like the Ukrainian ethnic group looks back at their history at this, being sort of an origin point, but the Cossacks didn't really see themselves, oh, we're Ukrainian. They were first and foremost were uh, pravoslavny, were Orthodox, and of course they had their Cossack identity, but it was what was really strong was their Orthodox identity and also their local one.
hi, Bubba.
I can't.
He just kicked his way into the room. I gotta close the door. I'm gonna keep running the movie though.
Both the United States and Rome remained deeply socially conservative and religious in their founding years. America's four founders were often religious fanatics, like the Puritans, Quakers, Cavaliers, and other hard-headed Englishmen, while the founders of Rome were equally stoic and religious. Early America and Rome were both rural, culturally homogenous, incredibly socially conservative. Both had incredibly strong senses of patriotism, more so than almost any other competing nations of their era. Both Rome and America stayed religious for centuries longer than the Greeks and the Romans, and viewed their nations as vehicles for divine plans and themselves as God's chosen people. Both cultures scorned luxury and...
All right, I'm back. What happened?
I thought I must have just picked up some feedback or whatever.
Oh no, somebody decided the barge open after he was taken out, and now he's going a little crazy. Hang on, good boy.
reveled in manly toughness in their early years. Both cultures viewed the arts, fine cuisine, and the like as luxuries that promoted weakness. These were societies that held very tough cultural...
I beg your pardon? You're talking about a set of founding fathers for the United States who lived in palatial estates. And certainly did not see themselves as weak.
Jesus, this is really. I mean, I don't even know what to say here. This is like a mass. Like this doesn't even. There's nothing really to this. It's just not the case. Like, but it's so broadly not the case. You can't even.
This is not.
Hit it.
What I was saying is I can't see where he's going with all of this.
Well, yeah, he says a sentence to force us to say an essay.
Yes, the part of the problem is
exactly like in response.
Yes, part of the problem is that we've been baited by his trap. His trap card has been activated. We're there. We are all in the shadow realm now.
You know that we just gave him a view to.
We've given him
to his financial success.
We
I really hope a lot of videos are demonetized in the and Patreon because this person does not deserve 494 subscribers.
Did you hear that? You should subscribe to Two Guys Talking History so we can beat Whatifalthist. Tell your friends.
What I'm gonna do. I think yeah. Everybody has to subscribe to us, but not only that. I think I'm gonna make my own channel where I just get drunk and say whatever on my mind. 490.
I don't think the company alcohol budget can support that.
500,000 subscribers. That's depressing.
I'm
really depressed. This ruined my day.
Anyway, let's go ruin Hetman's day some more.
Lines in which the elite were supposed to serve their societies rather than surrendering themselves to decadence. Both were deeply patriarchal societies in which women did not have a lot of cultural influence in the early period. An example of the moral fiber of both societies is the comparison between Cincinnatus and George Washington. Cincinnatus was a leader in the early Roman Republic who the Americans really liked because George Washington seemed so similar. So much so that...
Wait, is he trying to say Cincinnatus?
Yeah,
I
Cincinnatus.
was
Oh,
just
God.
thinking, like, he was trying to maybe.
I was like trying to figure this out. Like, what? Who's Cincinnatus? No, it's Cincinnatus. Cincinnati,
I don't
you buffoon.
see. I don't know if he was trying to pronounce it like in an authentic Latin way.
Yeah, that's
because, like, for example, Julius Caesar, the way we, in English
We've
say his name, Julius Caesar, or like something, they pronounce
yes,
C with
it would be closer to
K.
Czar.
Yeah,
But
But,
even
like-
then, that wouldn't be consistent with the pronunciation he's used throughout the video.
no, that's why I was a bit, wait, did he just try to be like pronounce correct Latin
Like,
or something?
inexplicably Latin.
Yeah.
motherfucker just said Cincinnatus.
He's just like, oh wait, I'm sounding dumb. I'm gonna just decide to pronounce Latin the correct way.
Yeah, Titan's absolutely correct here. It's not that they are patriarchal in the same way. Like there's a very particular relationship that Romans had with each other, and it changes based on class. And there are very particular relationships that women have in early American society, which also changes based on class. Martha Washington isn't spending her entire day doing laundry and cooking food, but one of Washington's soldiers, his wife might have very well in civilian life been doing that. So, like, these roles and relationships change and aren't really they're not a one-to-one correlation, and like the difference is
The wives of Roman senators also lived opulent as well.
well, and then like I have a feeling I know what's coming very shortly down the pipeline about slavery.
The city of Cincinnati in Ohio is named after him. And both Washington and Cincinnatus were leaders that were in effect made dictators by their nations in order to save them from an existential crisis in the early years of their foundation, but then they gave that power back to the people.
At no point was George Washington ever possessed of the power of a dictator. He is put in command of the Continental Army, which is a confessedly powerful position if you're the only army commander. However, the Continental Congress is still giving him his instructions. He steps down from that position. The Continental Congress continues under the Articles of Confederation, and then they turn around and write the Constitution and the presidency, which is very much designed for George Washington, but has limits built into it. At no point is he a dictator. Cincinnatus was a dictator several times, but that was a declared office, again.
Yeah, but have you never played Assassin's Creed 3?
Because
of course.
they weren't powerful.
Wait, we did that the other night. We talked through that entire thing.
Yeah, we
Oh.
Yeah, maybe that's something you guys should go over one day.
I don't know if I have the endurance to do that anytime soon.
Power hungry like that. A major similarity in the Romans and Americans is that they are good at changing out elites. Ibn Khaldun, one of the greatest historians in world history, said social elites largely became decadent after between 100 to 200 years on average. And Peter Turchin has proven this with modern science. Both America and Rome have been really skilled at shifting elites, thus allowing their empires to be very durable, once the previous elites become decadent, moving to another one. However, both the Europeans and the Greeks, their empires have largely fallen.
Is that a thing? Hold on, real quick. Is that a thing that Ibn Khaldun?
Decadency is kind of
sorry.
decadency
how
is
do you measure that?
Yes, decadency is a kind of abandoned. Like, it was a very much a concept that was in history 60 years ago, and no longer is, because we figured out that there's no real way to describe
Or
that
like
except
the term barbarian.
yes, or like the term barbarian. There's no real way to describe that except by revealing your own prejudice.
Yeah, but did Khaldun say that?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay.
I can see where this is going. He's basically saying that America is in moral decay. We're inherently weak because of being a diverse country with multiple different ethnic groups, and we're doomed to fall like the Roman Empire for some reason.
See, even his cultural shifts here aren't really.
He could just he makes this very convoluted attempt to present an argument that honestly he could just say what he wants to say, and it would save us a lot of pain watching this horrible video.
But like the elites, the East Coast aristocrats, I guess if you are broadly considering Virginia to be East Coast, but the first like what 6 presidents come from Virginia? Maybe 7? It's called the Virginia Dynasty. Like those are all planter class people. Oh, I'm sorry.
What does he mean by the managerial class?
Yeah, I'm not entirely certain. Apparently, middle managers now run the country, which is
8. The answer is 8.
8. Yes, that's it. Shockingly enough, probably not true.
However, even with all of these similarities, there are 3 key differences between Rome and America that are worth pointing out. The first being geographic, in that America is very far removed from the rest.
No, go back.
What the?
That looks to be Rome superimposed upon the United States.
America and Rome have been really skilled at shifting elites, thus allowing their empires to be very durable, once the previous elites become decadent, moving to another one. However, both the Europeans and the Greeks, their empires have largely fallen when their elites become decadent. However, even with all these similarities, there are 3 key differences between Rome.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's Rome.
It looks so
Yeah,
it's
but I just because of his crappy maps, I just was like, what the? I didn't even see Europe or the Roman Empire in the outline.
Yeah, I thought it was like Fletch from Halo or something.
God help me.
Like that's the first thing came to mind.
I beseech you, Jesus, save us all.
Rome and America that are worth pointing out. The first being geographic, in that America is very far removed from the rest of the global system, while Italy is in the middle of the map. The technological difference between the Romans and their neighbors.
By what? By
Wait,
what?
Italy's wait.
Oh God! What map? What map is Italy in the middle of?
I know. Okay, you know what we can do? We can, in the future, we'll review this guy's videos, but I mean, it's just
Just the maps. Just the maps.
Just the maps, because it's so painful to hear his content.
Oh,
Italy is the middle of the map.
oh God! What middle of where?
Okay.
Middle is a relative term. You have to have a middle of something to be in the middle of. Like the middle moves. I can't. No, but Pippa, it wouldn't even be Jerusalem. Because Jerusalem, if Jerusalem was the center of the earth, then Jerusalem would be in the middle of the map, and Italy would be over here, kicking Sicily. Also, what is this map? Why are there white sections? Why, the white sections don't seem to correspond to any period of time that Roman controlled them. Why are there... never mind, it's gone.
Such as the Gauls and the Greeks was basically nothing, meaning the Roman struggle was largely against other men to spread their empire. Meanwhile, the Native Americans were thousands of years less advanced, and America was...
Well, we've just hit our racist quota for today.
Largely empty, meaning the
Native Americans are thousands of years less advanced.
Oh, makes sense, yeah.
The American struggle was more so against nature. America can leave and enter the world order whenever it pleases since it's so removed from it. Meanwhile, the Romans missed military...
We absolutely cannot. At any point that America stops asserting its interests, other countries start asserting their interest in its stead.
Occupy all their neighbors in order for Italy to be safe. The second key difference being Christianity and Christian values. Christian values enforce a greater degree of respect for human life.